"There's no gift for poor people like you," she sneered. "Just go back home." We couldn't understand what my sister-in-law Emily was saying. Emily was grumbling, voicing her complaints about everything. It seemed she had hidden the present she was supposed to give to her daughter Lisa, slipping away at the last minute to do so. She snatched the gift Lisa had prepared right out of her daughter's hands, examining it with disdain before tossing it to the floor. "This measly thing can't be a gift. People who bring stuff like this aren't family." "Go back home," she spat, clearly disappointed it wasn't the brand name item she had expected. Lisa's carefully selected earrings lay scattered on the floor, picked up by the other children in the gift exchange. Lisa herself stood frozen, tears welling up in her eyes as she struggled to comprehend what had just happened. As the reality sank in, Emily looked smug at the sight of Lisa's distress. My mother-in-law entered the room and joined in laughing at Lisa, while Emily continued to belittle us. But her triumph didn't last long. "I am Mary Harper. I work part-time while raising my only daughter Lisa as I approach my 50s. Lisa, now 13, was born when I was 35. Although my husband Ken, who is just a year older than me, is not Lisa's biological father. Before Ken, I was married to someone else, and Lisa is from that marriage. We were a happy family of 3 until tragedy struck when my ex-husband died in a car accident when Lisa was just 3 years old. She barely remembers him. I was devastated, but I couldn't afford to lose Lisa too. I made the decision to raise her as a single mother, balancing childcare with part-time work. 2 years later, I met Ken at my job. In the spring, being a single mother, I sometimes caused inconvenience to my colleagues, like when I had to pick up Lisa from kindergarten. Ken always supported me with these little things. Attracted by his kindness, we started dating. Initially, Lisa was nervous around Ken, being her first experience with an adult male figure. He understood this and approached her more as a friend than a father at first. Lisa must have felt Ken's kindness too. Gradually, Lisa warmed up to him. She started calling Ken Dad and looked genuinely happy. During our relationship, Ken confessed that he was infertile. "I consider Lisa as my own daughter. Even though we can't have kids together, I still want to live with you and Lisa." Ken must have felt inferior about not being able to have children, but the fact that he showered Lisa with love didn't change. I remember when Lisa was sick, Ken rushed over to take care of her. For Ken, being infertile was never a reason for me to leave him. Seeing him treat Lisa like his own daughter convinced me that leaving him wasn't an option. He didn't just pamper her, he also disciplined her when necessary. It was evident that he truly cared for Lisa. We had a thorough discussion and decided to cherish the happiness we had right in front of us. After Ken opened up about his infertility, he became even more caring towards Lisa and me. We started living together and got married when Lisa was 8 years old. My father-in-law warmly accepted our marriage. He dotes on Lisa as if she were his own granddaughter. Lisa has grown fond of him too, and we've built a good relationship with my father-in-law. However, my mother-in-law perceived me as a woman who seduced her son for his money. Whenever I visited my in-laws, she blamed me for every problem that arose. I was at fault if there weren't enough plates or if she found a speck of dust, accusing me of neglecting the cleaning. The list goes on, and it wasn't just my mother-in-law who berated me. Ken has an older sister, Emily, who is 2 years his senior. Emily is a housewife with 3 daughters ranging from high school to middle school age, all with calm personalities much like their father. She lives about a 10-minute walk from my in-laws' house, so she often brings her kids over to visit. Since we live about a 2-hour train ride away, we only visit during summer vacations and New Year's. That's why we regularly meet Emily and her family. Emily has a personality where she must always be the center of attention. She, along with my mother-in-law, picks on me and flaunts her new designer bags as a way to assert dominance. We aren't that well off, so this is the best we can do. My family is from North Dakota, quite a distance from where I currently live in Ohio. I don't keep in touch frequently, so I can't rely on them for financial support. I work part-time, but I don't have the luxury to afford designer brands. Emily knows this and flaunts it intentionally. She also works part-time, but her husband must have a good income. I can't wear or carry anything that's not a well-known brand. My outfit today probably cost around $20,000 in total. Emily's children wore regular store-bought clothes, so it seemed she was satisfied as long as she could dress herself up. I'd rather spend money on making Lisa happier than on myself. There's a big difference in our ways of thinking. I had grown tired of my mother-in-law and Emily's behavior. Lisa didn't seem to have a good impression of them either. Lisa's watching videos in her room, she'd say, hiding whenever they were around. It's unfortunate that my daughter, still a child, has to be involved in adult squabbles. Both of them always have something to say, don't they? I'm sorry about that. It's always been like this since the past. Remember, both Dad and I are on your side, Mary, especially my father-in-law. He seems to have never thought highly of Emily's tendency to assert dominance. He would step in and mediate whenever there was an issue. Ken also didn't have fond memories of his childhood with Emily, often recalling how she would eat his favorite sweets. Both had grown up, and since Ken moved out, he seldom visited home. So until recently, their interactions were minimal. After marrying me, Ken would only visit to let his parents see their granddaughter. I rarely saw him talking to Emily. However, Lisa and Emily's kids got along well. It would be unfair to separate the kids due to adult issues. With the support of Ken and my father-in-law, Emily and I maintained a reasonable distance. Fortunately, she never came to our house. Bearing it a few times a year made everything manageable. I think as Lisa grows up, we'll see them less. Just a bit more patience. I'm fine. I reassured Ken and myself, too. One day, when the Christmas lights began twinkling in the town, we received an invitation for a Christmas party at my in-laws. My father-in-law, being considerate, invited Lisa. Emily seemed to be organizing it, with some help from him, of course. Lisa wanted to go. She's only 13, not used to traveling alone for 2 hours on a train to my in-laws. The party was on a Sunday, and both Ken and I were off work. We decided to take Lisa to the party. With Christmas parties, gift exchanges are common. We couldn't afford anything extravagant but decided to prepare a present. Hearing this, Emily audaciously specified her own gift list along with the invitation. A list of presents arrived. Checking it, I found luxury brand necklaces, cosmetics, and the like. Hardly items for children. Each item exceeded $1,000. What was she thinking about a children's gift exchange? I had never seen Emily's kids with branded items. This seemed more like a wish list for herself than for the kids. Ignoring her list, we let Lisa choose the present. She couldn't decide in one shopping trip, going several times. Each time, her options increased, and she looked delighted. Eventually, she chose earrings and erasers totaling about $60. Lisa eagerly counted down the days to the party. It was a special occasion, and we were determined to avoid any trouble. The day finally arrived. Emily's kids had stayed over from the previous day to decorate. The Christmas-like extravagant cake and roast chicken were apparently handmade by my father-in-law, who used to be a chef. The adults decided not to gather in the room too much, wanting the kids to enjoy themselves. My in-laws' house had a layout with a living room adjacent to a small room at the back, which used to be Ken's childhood room. While the kids were having their Christmas party in the living room, the adults were in the small room, sharing drinks. Emily's husband couldn't attend due to his busy work schedule. You could hear the voices from the living room, filled with joyful sounds, while the adults were engaged in light conversation. Emily probably didn't want to face me. She was in the room where there was a lavish meal, but now she was nowhere to be found. That was fine by me, as I didn't want to face her either. As the party was drawing to a close, it was time for the gift exchange. "I want you to accept my gift," Lisa said, holding the present out with both hands to Emily's daughter. They happily accepted the gift. It seemed that Emily was the only one who had insisted on those specific presents, and her daughters weren't involved. After all, it was a gift meant for children. I started looking, but we couldn't find one gift, no matter where we searched. Maybe it was mistakenly thrown away. Then Emily, who had been out of sight, suddenly entered the living room. Upon seeing Lisa, Emily started yelling, "There's no gift for poor people like you. Just go back home." We couldn't understand what she was saying. Emily was muttering, voicing her complaints about everything until now. Apparently, she had hidden the present meant for Lisa. She had been in the next room, probably having gone to hide the present at the last minute. Emily snatched the gift Lisa had prepared from her daughter's hands. After scrutinizing the gift, she threw it onto the floor. Such a meager thing can't be a present. People who give things like this aren't family. Go back home. Emily seemed furious that the present wasn't the brand name item she had specified. On the floor, the earrings Lisa had carefully chosen were scattered. Other children were picking them up, but Lisa seemed frozen, unable to comprehend what was happening. Tears started to well up in her eyes as she began to understand the situation. At 13, it's understandable for her to cry. Emily, seeing this, wore a triumphant look. My mother-in-law entered the room late and laughed at the crying Lisa. Emily continued to berate us, taking advantage of the situation, but this didn't last long. "Emily, you're the one who should leave," my father-in-law, normally a mild-mannered man, rushed in from the next room. He began yelling at Emily while wiping Lisa's tears. I had never seen him angry or even irritated, but now he was furiously scolding Emily. Even my mother-in-law, who had been mocking along with Emily, was silenced. "Dad, were you listening?" I had been the only one searching for the present with the kids. I assumed my father-in-law, who's not good with alcohol, hadn't seen anything. But he and Ken had witnessed everything. It turned out that only my mother-in-law and Emily were drinking alcohol. My father-in-law and Ken had non-alcoholic beer while I was searching for the present. Ken told my father-in-law about Emily demanding brand name gifts. My father-in-law couldn't overlook such behavior and waited for the right moment to intervene. And there was more. Emily's children began comforting Lisa. "What are you doing? Stay away from her. You'll catch her poverty," Emily said in a panic, trying to persuade her children to leave Lisa. But the children weren't listening to her. My mother-in-law also tried to intervene, but all the children were facing Lisa. None of them turned back. It was as if they were showing through their actions that what Emily and my mother-in-law were doing was wrong. "How long are you going to keep craving brand name items? You're just a housewife now." My father-in-law moved the children to another room and shared a story from the past. Apparently, Emily had always had a habit of overspending. She started working at a hostess club in college, desiring more spending money. The salary was much higher than at a supermarket job. Understandable for a young girl freshly out of high school to get carried away with such income. Moreover, there was a need to wear dresses and brand-name bags at the club. She would work more to buy new designer bags and increase her shifts when short on money. Continuing this lifestyle for 3 years, however, she quit in her 3rd year of university after my father-in-law discovered her club job. She tried to continue working secretly but gave up when threatened with being kicked out of the house. It was the only time, according to my father-in-law, that he had ever yelled at Emily. After quitting, Emily worked as a cashier at a supermarket and eventually became an office worker at a general company, where she met her now ex-husband and quit her job upon marriage. Even after quitting, she couldn't escape her lifestyle of buying brand name items. Her husband often scolded her. "If you can't buy it yourself, it means it's beyond your means. Don't make others buy it for you." The gifts she specified for us were all things Emily wanted to buy. A gift is supposed to be like that. What's wrong with that? Emily retorted breathlessly. "Emily, you're living off your part-time salary, right? Yet how can you afford so many brand name items?" I've increased my shifts, all bought with my part-time salary," her response faltered when hit with the truth. My father-in-law didn't miss her hesitation. "Then what's this?" He showed us his phone, displaying a screen with the total amount of debt from private financial institutions. "Why do you have this?" "I saw it in your mother's room. There's no better proof than this." Emily was speechless and looked down, crestfallen. The Christmas party atmosphere had completely changed. We decided it was best for us to leave as our presence seemed to be more of a hindrance. It wasn't the kind of Christmas I wanted the children to remember. We bought Lisa's favorite stuffed animal on the way home and had our own little family party. 3 months later, my father-in-law informed me that Emily had gotten divorced. Her ex-husband hadn't known about the debt. After learning about it through my father-in-law, he conducted a thorough investigation. Shockingly, Emily had canceled the children's education insurance policies and spent all that money on brand name items. Her ex-husband couldn't forgive this and chose divorce. Emily, along with my mother-in-law, confronted her ex-husband's family, but it backfired and led to being disowned. Since that Christmas, the children had also distanced themselves from Emily. Fortunately, they were all over 15 and chose to live with their father. Emily is now being sued for alimony and child support by her ex-husband. She's behind on the payments, but luckily her ex-husband has a steady income, so the children aren't struggling financially. However, raising 3 children alone as a single father is challenging, especially since he was often away from home due to work, which was why he couldn't attend the Christmas party. Maybe I can help with everyone's studies. I'm currently researching online education at work, so this could be a perfect opportunity. Ken has always loved children, and they are fond of him too. He often helped teach them when at my in-laws' house, especially since he had stood up for Lisa. Following a formal request from their father, Ken started occasionally overseeing the children's studies online. Even though it's been half a year since the divorce, I still occasionally receive bitter messages from Emily. Emily continued to deflect responsibility and berate Ken and the children. "I raised them. What ungrateful daughters. I was kind in raising them. They will surely regret this divorce is just outrageous." After the divorce, Emily apparently returned to her parents' home. Since then, my mother-in-law had been unfailingly supporting her, despite her volatile temper. My father-in-law began to have doubts about my mother-in-law's behavior. She, who used to frequently scold Emily, was now affirming everything she did, which seemed off to anyone observing. When my father-in-law started investigating my mother-in-law, he found decisive evidence. He requested us to check something, so after a long time, we visited my in-laws' house again. Ken and I had been keeping our distance from my in-laws' house. There was no need to visit as my father-in-law regularly came to our home. They always went shopping at the same time every day. When we arrived, they had just stepped out. The living room, once lavishly decorated for that Christmas party, now had a melancholic feel with only my father-in-law's dishes set out. As we looked through everything, we found documents showing debts under my father-in-law's name. It made no sense for my father-in-law to have these debts. As we finished going through everything, we heard the front door open. They must have seen our shoes. Emily and my mother-in-law rushed into the room, clearly flustered. "Why are you guys here?" Panting, Emily confronted Ken. "Emily, what is this? I don't remember incurring such debts." My father-in-law calmly separated Ken from Emily and presented her with the papers. They were details of debts taken out in his name because Emily could no longer borrow under her own. "And this isn't. This is in Mom's name." It turned out not only Emily but also my mother-in-law had debts. Apparently, my mother-in-law had spent their savings, meant for their retirement, on lavish expenses with Emily. My father-in-law, a frugal man who saw saving as a hobby, had accumulated about $1.2 million for a peaceful retirement from his time as a company employee. But they had spent it all in 3 years and kept accumulating more debts. In total, they owed about $1.46 million. It couldn't be helped. The stress of not paying child support was piling up. "That's right. It's all the fault of the man she divorced. Don't shift the blame. You two are responsible for not controlling your desires." Emily and my mother-in-law continued with their pitiful excuses, blaming the ex-husband, their daughters. My father-in-law, how could they think to blame others like that? My father-in-law refuted all their excuses with sound arguments until they finally fell silent. As if to end everything, he produced a divorce form. "Being married to you has been the shame of my life. Emily is not my daughter." Seeing the file, Emily just watched and didn't apologize at all. My mother-in-law began urging Emily to apologize, but Emily, unwilling to do so, argued back. Finally, with nothing left to say, my father-in-law left the scene. "What are you doing standing there? Go and bring Dad back." Once my father-in-law had left, Emily started to panic. It seemed she hadn't expected action, just words. "Now you want to make up with us after everything you've done? Please just stay out of our lives. There was nothing good left to be gained from staying there." Ken and I left my in-laws' house that night. While relaxing in the living room, the doorbell rang. It was past 10 p.m., an unreasonable hour for visitors. Checking the monitor, we saw Emily. Ken decided to deal with it while I watched from the living room. "What do you want at this hour? How dare you, a childless brother, speak to me like that? Let me in right now." After we left, it seems Emily and my mother-in-law had a huge argument. Then Emily was kicked out of the house. She tried going to her ex-husband's place, but was, of course, turned away. She came to our house, reluctant to spend money on a hotel. "This is a joke. Leave now, or I'll call the police." "We're family, just let me in." Despite Ken's warnings, she continued, causing a loud scene. Even after being told she was disturbing the neighborhood, Emily became more agitated. With no sign of her leaving, we did as we said and called the police to send her away. "Why do you guys get to be happy? I will never, never forgive you," she yelled as the police took her away. Ken, myself, and her ex-husband had all tried to reach out to Emily initially, but she herself ruined all of it. Approaching 50, Emily probably can't change her personality now. She can't accept that she has lost everything, money and family, and there's no turning back. Later, my father-in-law contacted us to thank us and update us on the situation. It seems Emily and my mother-in-law ended up blaming each other. Eventually, they became estranged from each other, both burdened with debts in their names, living in poverty. My mother-in-law reportedly paid alimony to my father-in-law immediately, but she likely didn't have the means to arrange such a large sum of money quickly. She probably took on new debts to make the repayment. Fortunately, the debts incurred in my father-in-law's name were covered by the alimony. He has rented a new place and is working as a taxi driver to rebuild his retirement funds. Emily's children still keep in touch with my father-in-law after the divorce. Despite everything, they cherish their grandfather, something he's very grateful for. Then came another Christmas at my father-in-law's new place. Lisa and the children enjoyed a gift exchange. They chose the gifts themselves. There were no brand name items, but the presents that brought smiles to their faces were the best. Can brand name items and large sums of money that are beyond one's means really change a person's character this much? This incident has made me rethink my views on money. Lisa is still close with Emily's children. I'm quietly watching over them, hoping they don't follow in their mother's footsteps. Led in divorce form, my mother-in-law started to panic and apologize, crying yet.